Hi everyone, I'm Suki Sandhu and I'm the founder and CEO for Audeliss and INvolve.
And I'm Rachel Huggins. I'm the head of representation at Audeliss.
This week, Audeliss and INvolve are celebrating intersectionality with a week dedicated to providing insights, guidance, and of course, celebrating the wide range of people and vibrant identities that exist within workplaces and in societies.
And in this quick interview, Suki and I are going to be asking each other questions about our experiences as people with intersectional identities. For those who aren't sure what intersectional means, it was a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw to describe how systems of oppressions can overlap to create distinct experiences for people with multiple identity categories or intersecting identities.
So we're really excited to talk to each other and about this topic. In fact, Rachel and I talk a lot, so we've got loads of questions to ask. So I think we should just jump straight in, Rachel. So tell us about your career journey so far, then I can share mine.
Okay, so I started working in a boutique recruitment firm before moving to a large IT-focused organisation to help set up their retail division. After a few years of working with the same director, I got the opportunity to help them set up their own business, which was a phenomenal journey. And for the last 23 months, I've been working for you, Suki. So starting off as a delivery consultant before earlier this year, moving over to the business development side in a newly created role as head of race representation. So the same question to you, Suki. Tell us about your career journey so far.
And I love working with you, Rachel. So thank you for being amazing and sparkly and brilliant as always. I could talk about this forever, but basically, I went to University of Birmingham. I did economics. My parents wanted me to be like a doctor or a lawyer or do a proper business degree, and so I did economics and graduated from there. I joined the graduate scheme of a really large global recruiter. And that's where I kind of cut my teeth in the world of recruitment and really loved the consulting side of having candidates, clients, and marrying the two, and was really good at it. I loved it. It was all about relationship building. I then went to a smaller boutique firm that had a focus on diversity and inclusion for a few years, was a partner. That's where I started to do more executive hiring. And that's where I found my niche. That's where I was like, this is what I really enjoy. And I knew that I could do it better than the firm that I was in. So I wanted to launch my own business and do it more seriously with real passion and authenticity. And thus Audeliss was born 11 and a half years ago, believe it or not. In fact, today is the last day of the first half financial year. So it's 11 and a half years today.
Amazing.
Crazy. And so having looked back since then, the driver for us has always been about actually an intersectional approach. It was always gender, race, and LGBT plus were the priority kind of candidate groups we wanted to help. And then 2 years after Audeliss, I launched INvolve, which is an inclusion consulting firm, where we then support companies with helping them be inclusive through talent programs, workshops. We have a diagnostic tool to measure how inclusive a business is. And we do these role model lists, which you know all about, which celebrate the different communities that we're talking about today and identities. And here I am now. So really proud to be leading a team of almost 60 people, believe it or not, in the UK and the US. It's a bit bonkers. But yeah, it's we're changing the world one senior hire at a time and trying to make sure that everyone belongs in the workplace. So yeah, it's lots more work to do, as you know.
Completely. And being genuine and passionate about everything.
Exactly. but coming back to the intersectionality point though, Rachel, like what do you think some of the barriers to progression have been that you face as a Black woman?
Do you know, I've always worked in organizations where there hasn't been anyone who looks like me in senior leadership. And frankly, that is still the case. I go into client meetings and I don't see a lot of Black people, let alone Black women. And I think the lack of representation meant that it was impossible for my senior leaders within the workplace to proactively visualize me with a seat at the table. And also that was being reflected within society. Society was telling them that Black people work to a certain level within organizations and stay there, so we get bottlenecked. And I actually went to work in an organization where one of the board directors told me that I was too successful. And as a result, I was sitting as an anomaly within their sales figures, and they needed to keep everyone on an average for commission payouts. So with me billing too much, he had to pay out additional amounts on his metrics that he worked out. So they actually reduced my percentage commission that I could receive. They gave me a tiny pay rise. And I think what's important to note there is that I was one of 2 Black people who worked in the organisation. And surely there should have been a conversation such as, you are performing really well, let's see how we can continue your growth within the organisation. But that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really sad your experience. That's not good. And I know that as because when I think about intersectionality for me personally, obviously I'm Indian, I'm gay, but I'm also like working class. I'm from Derby in the Midlands. I'm not from London. Even the way I say London, the way I speak is not like posh Londoners. Even though a lot of people think that I'm quite posh and I'm not. And I think a lot of the kind of barriers that I think I've faced have actually largely been, I would say, more personal actually, around just home life. Like being gay and Indian has been something quite hard for me to reconcile at home. And I remember even like telling my mum when I came out to her, which would have been 15, 14 years ago, where her first response was like, oh, you can still get married. Because getting married and weddings are quite big things in Indian culture. I mean, you must have seen it. You must watch Indian matchmaking on Netflix. You can see it all play out on TV on a program. I mean, you see how aggressive it can be to get married. So, and then the fact that I'm obviously also at the time was dating a gay white German Catholic guy also was like a bit of a double hit for my mum to deal with. And actually, she didn't actually meet Manuel for a number of years because they just weren't ready to. But now, for instance, they call him son. He's part of the family. Like, it's amazing. I never thought I'd see that. They came to our wedding when we converted to marriage. And the only other barrier that perhaps I've seen from an intersectional perspective, similar to you, is just the lack of role models. Just not seeing like brown and Black people in positions of power and influence. I suppose it's one of the reasons that drove me to set up my own business, because I thought, well, if we're not going to see it, how do we help accelerate it? And so that's why we want to change the world one senior hire at a time with Audeliss, is because we want to see that pace of change be quicker, because it's just not getting fast enough. And we've talked about that whole you can't be what you can't see in the past, but it's really true. Like if you can't see people like you think that you can't get there too, which then has like a knock-on effect to everyone else, and it just stops us from getting there, which is why I suppose there's so much imposter syndrome in most diverse communities, because I sit there saying, I can't believe I'm here.
It's
like
true.
hosting a dinner in New York on Wednesday night here with about 50 business leaders, and I'm like, oh my God, we did that. That's how did we? I sometimes don't believe it myself.
It's true. I mean, I constantly feel like that little Black girl from Birmingham thinking, who does she think she is? But I know that I have to work past that. And that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love you and respect you, Suki, because you are a role model. You're out there and you're shouting it and you're passing the baton back. And that's important.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you because I love your hair. And I remember you were saying how before you had to censor your hairstyle or something because the way you were, and I'm like, what? I was like, your hair can be as wild as you like. I don't bloody care. Like, it's so crazy. That seems so crazy to me that someone would even say that.
Yeah, I actually asked an old manager for permission to remove my long black straight hair extensions that were costing £180 every 6 weeks, to remove them so that I could have my natural hair out. But I posed it as a question saying, I'm thinking about having natural hair. What do you think? She had no idea that I was asking for her permission. But if she had said no, because clients would have thought that was too unprofessional.
I mean, I would love to see. I'd love to see photos of you with long. I can't even imagine it. I'm sure
I look like a completely different person.
Regardless, it looks amazing. All right, let's go on to the next question. What do you think is one huge misconception people have assumed about you because of your identity?
Yeah, I mean, I can't hide the facts that I'm Black. It's the first thing that people see, and actually I wouldn't want to hide that because I am proud to be a Black woman. But a huge misconception is that I can't possibly know what I'm talking about. And I've actually had a few people say to me, you speak well. What does that mean? Tell me. What do you mean I speak well? What does that mean? Let's break that down.
I think it's because you don't have a Brummie accent.
Every now and then I do. Anybody with a keen ear can hear
But
it.
you have to kind of laugh it off, because I mean, I've had that a few times. Oh, you speak such good English, and then I put on a really posh Queen style voice. I'm like, oh my, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I have to say, my biggest misconception is mine is more like when me and Manuel go out for dinner. He's a gay white guy, and say it's a nice restaurant. They'll always bring the bill to him. And it really, really annoys me, because I'm like, no, actually, it's over here. I'm gonna pay. Like, here's my card. But I think every single time we've been, it's always been that way. And I mean, he finds it hilarious.
Yeah.
And actually, occasionally he might pay, which obviously I quite like. Quite nice when he pays again. But yeah, that's the one thing that really frustrates me, is that they assume that I'm the one that isn't as successful or can't afford to pay the bill. And that really frustrates me. But you also just get used to it. Like, you're almost numb to it now. Like,
But
I don't know.
Shouldn't be numb to it. And doesn't it drive you to be even more successful?
It does, but then I'm like thinking now out loud, talking to you about it, like, should I call it out?
Yes.
Should I be like, why did you give the bill to him and not me? But then
It's
I feel
a
like
simple
that's really
question.
aggressive. I don't know, I feel like it's that really I feel like that. Because I don't think maybe they're probably also doing, we talk about unconscious bias a lot, and actually they're probably just unconsciously, they don't realize they're doing it. So maybe calling it out, maybe in a nice way, it could happen. I don't know. Like, it's something.
But isn't that the important thing? Like, if we see a behavior and if it is unconscious, let's try to unpick it. Let's educate at the same time.
Yeah.
Or let's ensure that people are just aware of what they're doing and the impacts that could have.
Yeah, agreed. I think next time I will call it out. I'll do it with a smile on my face, very constructively. How has your intersectionality enabled you to excel at the work you do?
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, hopefully you'll agree with this one, but I work hard. I do. And actually, during the Black Lives Matter demonstrations, I had an ex-colleague say to me, Rachel, you are Black and a woman. And they literally just had this light bulb moment and realized that's the reason why I work how I do. And growing up, my mum used to say to me, you need to work twice as hard to get half as far, which is true. And actually, I think a lot of Black and brown people have experienced that. But as a result, it means that I'm scared to fail. And if I fail, I don't see that as just me failing, but an opportunity for others with non-biases for that to come out when they interact with somebody who looks like me. So I throw everything into my work. I don't want to fail.
I mean, it is really spooky, because I basically had really similar answers, in the fact that, like, that fear of failure is what makes me work 3 times harder than anyone else, or even more, actually, because I do work really, really hard. More so because I don't want to let myself down, but then I don't want to let my community down. And obviously, when you represent so many different communities, like we talked about, Indian, gay, working class, from a Derby boy, like I want to do them all proud. Like, I don't want to mess it up for anyone else behind me. I want to help them up the ladder as you progress yourself. And I think being intersectional and intersectional approaches gives you more empathy around understanding so many different identities, and coming from a place of almost seeking to understand, which makes it a little bit easier for everyone, because you don't ever really know what's going on in someone's life, particularly now that with hybrid working, you're not always physically in the same space. You're working virtually and remotely. You have to be more attuned to people's different styles and things that might be going on in the home that you might not be aware of. So I think for me, just my intersectionality hopefully makes me more empathetic. Well, I like to think I am, but ask. Well, I don't know. What do you think? Am I not? I don't know. This could be a little 360 feedback.
Well, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think that. I think when you are from an intersectional background, you are hyper aware, but it means that you listen, you ask questions, you don't put words into people's mouths. Like, you listen and then you respond and you try to problem solve.
Yeah. This is a great conversation, Rachel. I love it. We could go on forever, but we only literally have a couple of minutes left. So how do you, let's both answer this last question, but how do you think you've broken through the double glass ceiling?
I spoke out. And actually, I worked with leaders who have purpose and who value not only the work that I do, but they see me as I am, the Black woman in front of them with imposter syndrome. I show my vulnerabilities and I see strength in showing those vulnerabilities. And part of that is having somebody who can then be your sponsor, who can elevate your voice rather than being my voice. And that's really powerful for me.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. And I mean, for me, the way that I suppose I broke the glass ceiling was through just being, if I think about, well, for me, there's two sides. There's me when I was employed as an employee, and then me as a founder, CEO, entrepreneur. And I would say I broke the glass ceiling myself as an employee because I worked really hard and put my talent first and foremost. So I was like the #1 billing partner, the #1 consultant globally, whatever, like in the business. And that kind of gave me the confidence to then like be myself and come out. Because like you say, with my race, we can't hide it, right? When you walk in the room, but I can hide being gay. I can if I wanted to, not that I do, but I could.
Good.
And then if I think about as an entrepreneur founder, the reason I set up the business is to shatter the glass ceiling, is to shatter it for lots of different minorities and to help accelerate that breaking of the ceiling, quite frankly. So that's how I would say that I've helped on that side. And from my perspective, it's more about change. What's that expression? Change the game, not the player. Like that's kind of what I think we should be doing. It's not about changing who we are. It's breaking down the systems and the institution, the processes around us for everyone to succeed on an equal footing. So trying to build more equity into the workplace and in society. So that's kind of how I think we're and you're helping us do that. I'm not doing it on my own. We have me, you, and another nearly 60 people that are like our champions and advocates for driving like the change we need to see.
Well, we see the change and we see the potential that the change can do. So let's make change happen.
Exactly. And on that note, we have to conclude this interview or this meeting. I mean, I could talk forever, but so lovely catching up and seeing you. And you know, I'm going to see you very soon anyway. So we wish everyone a really happy intersectional week. So there's loads of great content that's going to be out there. So share, comment, share your stories and ideas, and let's change the world even more.
100%. And reach out to us with your questions as well if you have any.
Bye, everyone.